The terrifying vision Saint Teresa had about lukewarm Catholics and what Christ showed her. There is a vision buried deep within the writings of Saint Teresa of Jesus, a vision she revealed with reluctance, only because obedience required it. She never spoke of it lightly. In fact, she hesitated even as she wrote, because she knew that what she saw was not simply for her, but for every soul living halfway between grace and indifference. It was a vision of the lukewarm, those who are neither cold nor hot, neither fully in the world nor fully in God. Those who show the appearance of devotion but lack the flame that gives devotion life. In her time, as in ours, these were the souls most at risk, and yet the least alarmed. Teresa wrote that one day in prayer, the Lord permitted her to see the true spiritual condition of people who called themselves faithful, but lived without fire. She did not see dramatic sins or shocking crimes. She saw something quieter, subtler, and far more deadly. The slow dying of love in souls who once belonged to God. She saw a soul at prayer. Its hands moved along the rosary beads. The lips whispered the holy words. The gestures were correct, familiar, routine. But within, the soul was like an abandoned chapel, cold, dark, untouched, not defiant, not rebellious, just empty. The prayers were spoken, but they carried no weight. They made no wound in heaven. They rose no higher than the breath that uttered them. It was devotion without heart, worship without attention, religion without love. Teresa said the Lord allowed her to perceive that this soul believed itself to be faithful. It attended Mass. It confessed its sins. It performed its duties. But all of it was done as though checking boxes on a list, not as an offering of the heart. The soul did not resist grace. It simply ignored it. Christ spoke to her then, and his tone was filled with sorrow. He told her that lukewarmness is more dangerous than open sin, because the lukewarm soul does not feel the need to change. It is spiritually asleep, lulled into thinking that habit is holiness and routine is love. The lukewarm do not fear judgment, because they do not believe they are in danger. They do not hear the warnings, because nothing seems obviously wrong. They do not seek God with urgency, because they assume they already possess him. Teresa trembled, because she saw what few ever see. She saw that spiritual indifference is not a quiet life, it is a quiet death. And the worst part, she wrote, is that such souls do not know they are dying. Teresa wrote that after showing her the danger of spiritual indifference, the Lord revealed something even more unsettling, not the final consequence of lukewarmness, but its beginning. The slow withering of a soul that once burned with love, but now drifts into spiritual sleep. And what terrified her most was not how loud or dramatic this fall was, but how quiet. She said the Lord allowed her to see what happens when love grows cold. It does not happen instantly. It does not begin with some great sin. It is not the result of a violent rebellion. Instead, it unfolds gradually, silently, almost invisibly, across years of small compromises, daily neglects, and moments when the soul chooses comfort over grace. Teresa described seeing souls whose interior light had dimmed, souls wrapped in a kind of spiritual fog. Grace was still present, still flickering, still trying to burn, but the flame no longer rose toward heaven. It smoldered like a dying ember, buried beneath ashes that had not been stirred in years. She said the sight broke her heart. Not because these souls were evil, but because they were asleep. She saw how these souls moved through spiritual life with minimal effort. They prayed, but only when it fit comfortably into their schedule, never out of hunger, never out of love. Their prayers were words, not fire. They confessed, but only the sins that were easy to name. They never opened the deeper wounds of the heart: pride, vanity, resentment, attachment. They approached the Eucharist with their minds wandering to a dozen earthly things: work, conversations, worries, plans. Christ himself was placed upon their tongues, yet their hearts were miles away. Teresa wrote that these souls reminded her of travelers wandering through a thick mist. They were not running toward sin, nor were they running toward God. They were simply drifting. They could not see their path. They could not recognize danger. They walked without direction, neither hot nor cold, neither alive nor dead. Christ explained to her that lukewarmness weakens every spiritual faculty, almost like a slow illness affecting the inner life. The memory begins to forget God's favors and consolations. The understanding grows dull, unable to perceive the urgency of salvation or the beauty of grace. The will, the very engine of the soul, becomes fragile, hesitant, easily swayed by worldly distractions, and the conscience, once bright and sharp, now whispers faintly, its warnings muted by habit and indifference. Nothing dramatic, nothing shocking, just a quiet fading. The soul becomes vulnerable, not through rebellion, but through neglect. Teresa wrote that the enemy does not need to tempt the lukewarm with great sins. Small ones are enough: tiny attachments, little distractions, harmless excuses. The devil whispers, "Pray later. Confess next week. You're not doing anything serious. You're not like those other sinners. You're doing fine." And the lukewarm soul listens, not out of malice, but because the whisper aligns perfectly with its comfort. Its danger is not that it hates God. Its danger is that it is content with loving him just a little. She saw souls that were once capable of heroic virtue, now reduced to minimal gestures, doing only what was necessary to feel respectable, never what was necessary to become saints. She said there is nothing more heartbreaking than seeing a soul created for burning love reduced to a flicker because it could not bear the inconvenience of holiness. She saw how these souls believed they were walking toward heaven, yet spiritually they were standing still, unmoving, complacent, stagnant. They had no sense of urgency, no awareness of their need for grace, no desire to rise higher. They lived in a state of comfortable faith, enough to soothe the conscience, not enough to transform the heart. In this state, Teresa said, the soul does not fall like a stone. There is no sudden crash, no violent collapse. The soul drifts, slowly, gently, silently. It drifts like a feather carried by the wind. And that, she wrote, is what terrified her more than anything else God revealed to her, not the drama of sin, but the subtlety of indifference. The soul does not sink into darkness all at once. It fades, it dulls, it loses the sharpness of love. It stops noticing the absence of God. A spiritual numbness spreads, soft and quiet, a descent so gentle that the soul never even realizes when the last ember goes out. This, Teresa said, is the danger of the lukewarm, not the violence of evil, but the softness of spiritual sleep, not the hatred of God, but the absence of desire for him, not a single great sin, but a lifetime of small ones accepted without resistance. And by the time the soul awakens, she wrote, the flame it was meant to protect is almost gone. Teresa said there was a single moment in her vision that pierced her more deeply than anything she had ever seen, a moment so vivid, so soul-shattering, that even recalling it made her tremble. It was the moment of death. Not the physical suffering, not the last breath, but the instant the soul leaves the body and discovers, with merciless clarity, what it has become. She said that when the body finally surrendered to death, there was no thunder, no violent tearing, no dramatic scene like the ones imagined by fearful minds. Instead, the separation was strangely gentle. The soul rose quietly, almost peacefully, as though awakening from a long sleep. A sleep where it had drifted through life, half conscious, half committed, convinced it was good enough. At first, the soul felt light, untethered. It felt a strange relief, like stepping out of a dim, airless room into open space. There was no immediate terror. In fact, Teresa said some souls appeared almost calm in those first seconds, unaware of what was about to unfold. But then, without warning, the soul found itself before the presence of God. There was no movement, no journey, no travel from one realm to another. One moment, the soul simply existed, and the next, it was standing in the radiance of the one who created it. Teresa said it happened in less than an instant, faster than breath, sharper than a bolt of lightning, and the soul suddenly knew that nothing could be hidden any more. And in that flash, everything was revealed. Every moment of half-hearted prayer, every confession said with the intention of getting it over with, every sacrament received casually, distractedly, without openness of heart, every grace poured out by God that was ignored, resisted, or wasted, every sin explained away, justified, excused, every opportunity for love that the soul allowed to slip by, every call from God that it shrugged off. The soul saw it all, not as scattered memories, but as a single, unified truth about its entire life. And in that revelation, Teresa said, a terror rose within the soul unlike anything words can describe. It was not the terror of fire, darkness, or punishment. No physical image could capture it. It was the terror of seeing the truth too late, the truth of who it had become, and the truth of what it chose to love. The soul understood with devastating clarity that it had not chosen destruction. It had simply never chosen love. It had drifted through life pretending that faith was a routine, that prayer was optional, that repentance could wait, that God would understand. It had treated grace like an afterthought, and eternity like a distant rumor. And now the truth stood before it. Heaven was not denied to this soul by force. God did not turn it away, but the soul could not bear the purity of his presence. Teresa said the soul felt as though it had entered a realm for which it had never trained, never prepared, never desired with any real sincerity. It stood before infinite love, and realized it had spent a lifetime offering almost none of its own. The sorrow that flooded the soul at this revelation was almost unbearable. Teresa said it was a sorrow so deep, so piercing, that earthly grief cannot even imitate it. It was not the sorrow of fear. It was the sorrow of wasted grace, the sorrow of knowing that it had been loved completely and responded partially. The soul saw what it might have been, what God had dreamed for it, what holiness could have bloomed within it, what joy it could have lived, what intimacy with God it could have tasted, what depths of love it could have reached, if only it had surrendered even a little more, even once. Teresa said that if such a soul were allowed to return to earth for even 1 hour, it would fill that hour with love so intense, prayer so sincere, repentance so wholehearted, that it would astonish the world. It would waste nothing. It would let go of every distraction, every vanity, every lukewarm compromise that once seemed harmless. It would run to God with a desperation born from truth. But the hour does not return. The moment of choosing has passed, and eternity has already begun. Teresa wrote that this moment, this revelation, this irreversible awakening is the true terror of lukewarmness. Not flames, not demons, not divine wrath. The real horror lies in standing before God and realizing that the flame meant to burn within the soul was allowed to die out by slow neglect. It is the agony of discovering that the soul itself extinguished the fire God once placed within it. And nothing is more terrifying than a soul that finally sees what it might have been, if only it had loved. After showing her this terrible vision, Teresa said, Christ spoke again, and his words carried both gravity and tenderness. He told her that lukewarmness is the hidden wound of the Church, the quiet disease that afflicts countless souls. It is not sensational. It is not dramatic. It does not draw attention. But it kills. He told her that great sinners often convert because their fall is obvious. They see the danger, and grace breaks through their despair. But the lukewarm rarely convert, because they do not believe they need saving. They tell themselves they are good enough. They rely on habits instead of holiness. They confuse routine with relationship. They mistake minimal faithfulness for love. Christ told her that this state grieves him more deeply than open rebellion, because the lukewarm treat divine love as something optional, ordinary, unimportant. They give God the leftovers of their time, the scraps of their attention, the remnants of their effort. He compared the lukewarm soul to a candle that still stands upright, but whose wick is so short, so thin, so neglected that it can barely sustain a flame. It does not go out suddenly. It burns out silently. And yet, here lies the mercy. He showed her that even the smallest spark can become a fire again if the soul simply asks. One moment of sincere prayer, one act of humility, one confession made with genuine repentance, one tear of love, just one, and God rushes in. Teresa realized that the Lord did not show her this vision to crush hope, but to awaken souls before the final hour. Lukewarmness is not hopeless, but it is dangerous. It is the slow drift toward a moment of truth that could have been avoided. Christ's warning was severe, but his mercy was greater still, for he revealed the danger precisely so that souls might escape it. When Teresa finished recounting this vision, she did not end with fear. She did not end with warnings. She ended with a plea, a final reflection that she said rang in her soul like the tolling of a bell. And that plea, she insisted, was not meant only for her century, but for every century that would come after, especially those that believe themselves safe, enlightened, advanced, or comfortable. She wrote that the greatest tragedy of the lukewarm is not their sins. Sin can be forgiven. Weakness can be healed. Fragility can be strengthened. No, the tragedy of the lukewarm is their blindness, their inability to see the true condition of their own soul, because they are neither cold enough to feel their distance from God, nor hot enough to burn with the desire for him. They sleep, Teresa said. They sleep through life while eternity waits at the door. She described them with heartbreaking clarity. They live as though there is no battle for their souls. They pray as though nothing depends on it. They confess as though grace is a mechanical guarantee. They receive communion as though it were merely a ritual passed down by tradition. They walk through the world half awake, lulled by comfort, noise, and routine, unaware that every day they drift a little farther from the flame meant to guide them home. Teresa warned that lukewarmness is not an occasional problem. It is the dominant wound of every comfortable age, every prosperous society, every generation that forgets hardship and becomes intoxicated by ease. She said that when suffering fades, the soul often drifts. When life grows soft, faith grows thin. And when God seems absent from the noise, people stop noticing his silence. Perhaps, in her cloistered cell in the 16th century, Teresa foresaw a time not unlike our own, a world overflowing with distractions, comforts, and noise, a world where spiritual hunger is masked by entertainment, a world where millions call themselves believers, yet live without spiritual urgency, neither rejecting God nor seeking him. Her message was not aimed at unbelievers, nor at enemies of the faith, nor at those who openly walk away from God. Her warning was addressed to believers, to those who still pray, still attend Mass, still say, "I believe," but whose hearts have cooled into polite religion. She pleaded with them across the pages of her writing, almost as if she were speaking face to face. Do not settle for a faith without fire. Do not mistake routine for devotion. Do not allow your soul to drift into polite indifference. And now, 5 centuries later, her words reach you, not to terrify you, not to condemn you, but to awaken you, to shake the dust from the soul, to stir the embers long buried under habit, fatigue, or distraction, to call you, yes, you, to the love you were created for. For Teresa understood something essential. Lukewarmness is not defeated by fear. Fear might shake the conscience for a moment, but it cannot transform the heart. Lukewarmness is defeated only by love, love renewed, love chosen, love rekindled in sincerity. So as this story draws to a close, let the vision she shared remain with you, not as a threat hovering over your life, but as a grace, a divine alarm ringing softly in the conscience, reminding you that your soul was made for something greater than comfort. Return to God, ask him to kindle the flame again, offer even one sincere act of love, take one step out of indifference, break the quiet, deadly routine of lukewarm faith. And if, while hearing these words, even a faint whisper stirred within your heart, a discomfort, a longing, a sudden clarity, do not ignore it. That whisper may be the ember God himself is trying to set ablaze. Pray for yourself. Pray for the lukewarm in your family. Pray for all who drift without knowing they drift. Ask Christ, who showed Teresa this vision, to show you where your own heart sleeps, and to awaken it with his mercy. May Saint Teresa of Jesus intercede for us. May the Lord deliver us from indifference, and may his love, burning brighter than all darkness, draw our souls back into the fire of divine love.